Well, today we have the absolute privilege to get to hear from artist and creator of 100 Cups of Compassion, a little art book journal devotional with a big heart with Robin Hamman. Thank you so much for taking
Oh my
time to
goodness,
chat with
thank
me
you for
today.
inviting me. This is fun.
Awesome. Well, we'll absolutely be getting to your book here in a moment, but let's do some quick fire questions to get started so that we can get to know you a little bit. For our first quick fire question, who's in your life? So like past, present, the people who you've got around you who have helped make you into the creative person that you are today.
Today. Well, unfortunately, I'd have to say my mom and my dad, but neither of them are with me, today, which is sad. I wish that they were, but we were talking just a little earlier when you were saying that, you always used the written word and that's your art form. So when I was growing up, I was creative, but I don't think they really knew how to approach me with that. I don't know how they didn't know where to put me in school and those kind of things. And so I was always put in creative writing classes and special creative writing classes and elementary school and that type of thing. And then when I got into like middle school and high school, they wanted me to write for, I mean, just the little school magazines and those kinds of things. And I thought that was so funny because I never really liked doing it.
Mm.
What ended up happening when in my 20s I started to actually take drawing lessons and found out that really my artistic talent line was really in drawing and painting.
Mm.
And so that is where I continued down that road in college, and so that's my passion. That's what I teach and that's what I love. But
Cool.
it zigged back as these winding roads always do, these journeys we're on, and it went back into the writing. So I'm kind of
Okay.
relearning how to write.
Interesting. So like growing up, your teachers, first creative writing and then art teachers really were influential for you.
Never had art teachers in school. That didn't
Oh,
come until I had graduated from high school. Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
So yeah. But that's the thing that latched on. It was all
Mm.
the writing in school and um, journalism classes. And I used to sit in there and think, I don't like this. Why am I doing this? But I could pound something out. And I guess they thought it was like okay and halfway decent, but I didn't love doing it. And then I loved the
Mm.
art. The visual art was the passion. But then
Yeah.
little by little, some of the writing started to creep back in over the past couple of years. And I'm 55 now, so that I've had some time, but little by little, some of that writing started creeping back in again. So
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah.
Cool. So what are you these days listening to? So you've got lots of art, like visual things and like people who have helped bring you to that. But what are you listening to? Do you have like a special podcast or like an affirmation that you say to yourself?
I do not. I do not. I like to listen to music. So that's probably my biggest influencer or my biggest gets me going. Um,
What's your favorite type of music, Robin?
my favorite type.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I listen to so much just across the board. I mean, I like old rock music, 50s, 60s. But I listen to anything. Even if you looked at my music list, my like my playlists, it's just all over the road. There's just so much diversity.
Mm,
It's because I just like music,
yeah.
and I'll go to any concert of anything. It doesn't matter what it is. I'll go because I love it. My husband is a huge music fan, and so he's got like 14,000 um, songs on his playlist.
Wow.
Just goes across all genres, and sometimes he'll go, "Oh, such and such is coming in concert," and I'm like, "Who?" But we go. I go, I'll go. Okay, I'll go because I just love. I love it. I love music, and
Mm.
I appreciate it. I think it's anybody that can sit down and play a musical instrument. That puts me in awe.
Mm. Yeah, that can be really inspiring. Absolutely. Oh, that's so fun. So what are your current reads, or what books are by your nightstand right now?
You know what? I brought, it's just like show and tell. I brought some. I just finished this, Life is Messy.
Mm,
So by Matthew Kelly. This was a really good book. So
awesome.
it was about just life and that it is messy, but how God is in everything,
Mm,
just as a basic outline of what it is. So that's really
mhm.
good. And then I, speaking of music, I wanted this book for my birthday. So my sister ordered it for me and it finally came. So I'm starting this one. I've only gotten to read like one chapter. I haven't gotten any further than that because I do a lot. So to sit down and read,
Mhm.
I have to really have extra time to sit down and do that.
Mhm.
But Stories of the Hymns,
Mm,
that cool. So it's Rawson, and I'm going to butcher this last name, Tanioli. Um,
okay.
so it's all these great hymns, but it's the backstories of all of them and how they were written, why they were written, what was going on with the people that wrote them.
Wow. I bet
Yeah,
that's fascinating. That's going to be a really fun one to get through.
I know. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome.
That's what I'm reading now.
Thanks for sharing those. Yeah, and we'll put links in the bottom in case people are interested in looking for that. What are you eating these days? Do you have like a regular food routine? Like every morning I eat this kind of food, or is there something that you're
Yeah,
craving this
probably.
season?
I mean, if it was up to me, I would eat nothing but cookies and cake and like have a pot of coffee all day long. That's all I would eat.
That sounds great.
I can't do that. There's no human being can do that.
Mm,
I'm pretty health conscious. I eat, pretty healthy. So like yogurt in the morning and a lot of salad and a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. We're real lucky here on this coast. We have a lot of farms that are kind of
mm,
outside of St. Augustine. So we get a lot of fresh food around here and we have
mm,
really good farmers markets.
mm. So you enjoy living that Florida life with fresh produce.
Yeah, I do. And the seafood's real fresh here too,
Mhm.
which I was born and raised on the other coast of Florida on the Gulf Coast. And so I've just moved here about 7 years ago. So the Gulf Coast was a little different because it's right in the center of the state. I think we kind of get things a little later.
Mm,
There's not a lot of farms around that area. There's none that I know of. Maybe,
mhm.
way out in Ruskin where they grow tomatoes, but so it's harder. And then you're getting like Gulf shrimp and Gulf fish. And um, when you're over here on the Atlantic side, it's just a bigger variety.
Mm.
That's been really great about one of the things I've loved about moving into St. Augustine is the food. It's just the quality of the food is really
Oh, that's fun. I will have to come visit you and we can eat
good. Well,
seafood together. That sounds really good.
everybody comes to St. Augustine. It's a great town. It's the country's oldest city.
Hmm. Cool.
It's
I
been
did not
around
know
since
that.
the 1600s. Yeah, lots of history. Mhm.
Awesome. That's definitely warrants a trip for sure. Cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, what are you creating these days? So, it could be just like a daily thing that you're working on, or if you got like and we'll go into more detail later on about bigger projects that you're working on, but what's kind of stewing for you these days?
Well, I was just approached, I do painting and gosh, there's a couple things I'm working on. I'm working on a second book, but I was just approached by some people from Flagler College. Flagler College is right up the street here. It used to be the Ponce Hotel back in the 1800s, and it was converted in 1960 to a college. And then it was an all-girls school, but now it's not. And they have, I think, 2,800 students.
Mm,
And they do this fundraiser called Power of the Purse, and it's for scholarships for women. And so they approached me and said, "Can you do some artwork? Do you think?" And I said, "Sure." So I'm working on 2 paintings for that right now.
okay. Oh,
Yeah.
neat.
So that's one thing, and then I'm still trying to pound out this second book, and
Okay.
that is going to go along the lines of I have 3 little small businesses. One's my Art Rob Studios, which is all my regular painting that I paint for other people or paint for myself. I have a pet portrait one, which is called The Twisted Leash. And then I have the 100 Cups of Compassion. So
Mhm.
each devotional is going to be about each one of those areas. So my
Mm.
next one I'm working on is The Twisted Leash. So I've been working on that, and that's all the
Cool.
pet and
Oh,
the
cool.
so
Yeah, that's exciting. That's a lot going on. That's really
it
fun.
is, and I work pretty much full time. So
Mhm.
yeah. So my little
Yeah.
hours here and there that I have free, I work on these things.
Well, yeah, it certainly sounds like when you have the free time, you've made that decision that it's going to be spent doing creative work.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's great.
It is.
Cool.
I know, like I shouldn't say this, but the lockdown was wonderful because
Mm,
we weren't open for 6 weeks at this little shop that I work at. And the weather here was probably the best weather we've ever had. And just, it was so creative. I did so much. It was just inspiring. My husband and I had a great time. I painted and worked on my book and rearranged my porch, which is my studio. And
mhm.
it was great. All that real creative stuff, all the juices were flowing. I was like, wow, this is pretty
Mm.
awesome.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I love that you were able to embrace what, yeah, has been just such a mess of
Yes.
couple years of
Craziness.
yes, ready for it to be over. But yeah, you've been really prolific. And well, one of the things that you have been prolifically doing is painting cups and bringing 100 cups of compassion into fruition. And so let's get talking about this. So, for those folks who aren't familiar with this book, how would you describe it to them?
Oh, it's a collection of decades of small cup paintings. So this grew very organically. And let me go all the way back. So um, I used to do, and I still do, I guess, to some degree, when I'm painting something that's difficult or I'm like just painting and I start to overpaint and I'm really, like artists do. And I know it's the same with writing, and I know it's the same with music. You start to kind of get in this cycle and you got to kind of break that cycle to get on to the next thing. Well, that was always, those cups were my doodle. So I would paint to loosen myself back up again. And they just kind of grew, and they were everywhere. I was like, what are these things? One day I just sat down and I went, wow, I got a lot of these like little cup paintings all over the place. And I thought it would be kind of cool if maybe I put those into a format, the same, put all of them into the same format. So I started buying these little 4x4 canvases, and I started doodling and painting on those. So I would create these little individual pieces of artwork, these little paintings. Well, those grew and grew, and then you only have so much room in your house. And I started thinking, what am I going to do with these? So I kind of started, I put together a Facebook page, I put together a website and kind of talked about them a little bit. It was all very loose. And in the meantime, this started back in 2013. I had decided to go back to school to get my master's degree in arts and medicine. So from the University of Florida. And so when I started that process, one of the classes I took was called Art and Compassion, and you had to come up with an art and compassion initiative. So, you say God working. So when I took that class, I went, well, I kind of already started that. I kind of already have this loose thing going. And so I brought it to my instructor, and he said, no, that's perfect. That's exactly the kind of thing that you're supposed to be doing in this class, is like your final project. And I said, okay, great. So I just bumped up the website. I bumped up the Facebook page, and then I started to blog. And this was, like I said, back in that was probably around 2014, 2015. And I would sit in coffee shops and I would paint. And if I heard, somebody having a bad day, or if there's something going on, I would give somebody a painting. Or if somebody came and approached me and just was interested and went, "Oh, what are you doing?" I'd say, just as it was, I feel like that was a great way for people to own a little piece of original artwork.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people can't afford a piece of artwork, but you can, here, I'm going to give you this little painting. And it's fun. It was fun. And then I would come back and I had a couple of entries in blogging about it. Well, then that kind of went out into the world. And as it did, I started to get people that would contact me. And I'm not even really sure how that they happened along, seeing this 100 Cups of Compassion. But I know, some people from Oregon had contacted me back in 2015 when there was a mass shooting out there, and I did a special painting for them and sent it. And there were some 9/11 families, and I sent a couple of paintings to them. And then little by little, some of my friends would see things on Facebook, and maybe their friends would see it. And, oh, I'm a missionary and I'm going to, Cuba, or I'm a missionary and I'm going to Mexico, I'm a missionary. Can we take your paintings? Yeah, sure. So then they had some paintings to take and give to people. And another friend of mine who did a lot of mission work in Tunisia, and so it kind of grew out from there. And as that happened, I always took pictures. I always document my work. And then I had, now I have these like hundreds and hundreds of pictures of these paintings. So what do you do with that? So that's when, through really a lot of prayer and reflection and, what do you do? It started to come to me. And of course, it's never me, right? It's never you. It's Holy Spirit working through you. But a devotional, I thought I can do that. I can put these cups, these paintings, these pictures of these paintings into a devotional. So that's where it started to go. And turns out that I knew a friend of mine knew somebody that had a publishing company, Two Penny Publishing, which is actually, she's been great. Jody Costa is her name. And that's who I worked with. And her and I kind of went back and forth online, how do we do this? How do we set this up? What's this going to look like? I went through and handpicked all the Bible passages and the quotes from the saints and quotes from other religious people, around the world for each particular painting that went into the book. And so that's how it grew, and it's still growing.
Oh, that's so cool. Thank you for sharing some of that. And it's really interesting that as a visual artist, you were expressing yourself, you were painting work for other people, but you were trying to better your practice, improve your practice, loosen up a little bit. And then you were drawn to painting cups as just a fun way of going through it. And then you went into more education. So can you describe a little bit more of what is a master's in arts and medicine look like? What is that? I can't figure that out. How do those two go together?
So University of Florida has a very big arts and medicine program that actually encompasses the whole hospital and the whole medical program at University of Florida and Shands Hospital. Duke University and I believe Iowa State also had very big arts and medicine programs that have been going on for 20 plus years. So it's nothing new to those hospitals. But the programs operate on such a level that they take in every type of art form that there is. So there's a Dance for Life class that they do with people that have Parkinson's or neurological issues, and you can actually go to the hospital and you can take these classes. They do a Sing for Life class for the same group of people, because they know that singing doesn't matter if you know how to sing or not. That's not a thing. They're not teaching you how to be a performer. They're teaching you singing to keep your muscles in your throat going. So it's almost like a form of physical therapy to some degree. Now I'm just touching on a few little ones. I mean, this is just these programs are huge and they're all encompassing. So like I worked when I went to do, most of it was all online at the time because it was for University of Florida, it was a brand new master's program. So it was all online. Now that was 2015, I graduated, and now current day, they actually have an online, I mean, a on campus. So you can go take it as a master's certificate, which is a year, a master's program, which is 2 years, and you're actually there on campus. And it grew from, I think there was myself and one other person who was a dancer. We're the first graduating class. There were two of us.
Oh,
That was in
wow.
2015, and now it's huge. It's absolutely huge. So, but anyway, that's a little bit of how it works at Shands, and they take in every art form, writing. They have people that will go bedside and write. They'll take documentation. They'll tell stories. They write stories for people that are either possibly dying or, sometimes older people would be in the hospital for long periods of time, and they wanted their histories written just in case, or recipes written down. So they would get a lot of, people that were writers that would go in and sit with people, teach people how to write while they're in the hospital. Because a lot of times people go into the hospital, and what happens, they get everything taken away. You get everything taken away. Your clothes are taken away. Your identity is taken away. You don't have anything really when you're in there. And if you have to be in there for a long stretch of time, there's no control. So the writing, the artwork, anything that you can give that person back, it gives them just a little bit of control in their day, in all those different art forms. So it's really a very beautiful program, and something that's sort of taken off in the past 20 plus years, and it's still growing. And
that feels really exciting.
yeah,
That's really good. I've been noticing more art therapy sort of programs, and blogs are popping up, and certification sort of things. And you and I know as practicing creatives that it is a great thing for mental and emotional and even physical health we're made to be creative, and when we can express creatively, we become more of ourselves, which is just a healthier version of to be fully who we are. That's how we're meant to live. And so that's really fascinating. So
amazing when you're in the hospital. When I did my professional intensive, I went in for a week, and you go in, and doctors actually, the program operates right there on campus. So you go into your office, you look on your, get into your emails, you find out when patients get admitted into the hospital, they actually get a little card that says if you want to participate in any kind of the arts and medicine program, and then the doctors will reach out and they'll say, I have a patient in room, whatever, and they would love to hear some music. Can you go up? And, the artists that work there are professional artists. I mean, the musicians are unbelievable, so they'll go in and they'll play, and it's almost like these people get a little mini concert, the patients when they're in their room. So it just, like I said, it operates full scale across all of the hospital. And papers and studies have been done. They're working on studies there as well that have been written up in peer-reviewed journals about what different forms of art do for the patients and the ER, and patients that are post-surgery, and cancer patients and heart patients. And so that's it's all integrated.
Really cool. Yeah, that's fascinating. I am definitely intrigued, and I think other folks listening to this will probably be really interested to find out more about that. So thanks for sharing.
Florida, and they have a summer intensive. So you can apply for a summer intensive. That's a 2-week long program, and you can go over there for 2 weeks and work. So it's just University of Florida Arts and Medicine, www. And it'll come right up when you Google it. So.
Great. Brilliant. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's really inspiring. So you have a very creative, artistic, expressive background, right? So, and you said you have three businesses that are different facets of your life. You have this arts and medicine master's degree. You've been living life as a professional artist for quite some time. But then I read something about you being involved in local politics as well. Is that correct? So can you talk us through this progression a little bit, please?
Sure. Yeah, that was like an old life long ago. Yeah, back in 2001, back when I lived back in Pinellas County in Safety Harbor, I got really involved with the neighborhood I lived in, and they had water issues. And it was actually a neighborhood I grew up in, moved out of the neighborhood, and then when I got married, and had my son, my first husband, that I'm remarried now, but my first husband and I moved back into this little neighborhood, and I still knew everybody in the neighborhood. So that was kind of like all my friends' parents still live there. I was like, oh my God, they're not even gonna let me in this neighborhood. But so that was kind of funny. But there were some issues with the creek. And it was, I just got sucked into that black hole, and I started, going to meetings and trying to figure out how to handle this and how I could help people with it. And I kind of got really sucked into it, and I loved it. So I was walking Safety Harbor almost every day, talking to people, and one thing led to another. And then it was like, are you going to run for this office? And I was like, why would I do that? But then, like I said, you just get sucked in, and you start going to all the meetings, and you start really understanding how it all works. And I thought, yeah, I'll give it a shot. So I ran, and I did. I ended up running 3 campaigns over the course of 7 years. I was a commissioner for the city of Safety Harbor. I won my first election, and that was a year because I was replacing somebody that had left. And then I had to run again after that. And then that was my next 3-year term, and I did that. And then I left the city, and I started working for our state representative at the time. And then I worked for him for about a year, and he left to run for Congress. And when he left, his seat opened up, so I ran for his seat. That one I did not win. So that was state representative position, but that was a whole nother level of icky. So I could go into years and years of talking about that. But
what would you say is maybe your top 1 or 2 takeaways from being in politics for that stint?
It's a difficult arena. You have to be very thick-skinned, and if you're not, when you go into it, you will be when you come out of it. And it's almost like a game. You have to know how to play the game and how to maneuver through it. And I've always said, I think everybody should try to run for something. Anything, could be anything. Just run for, either local, like I did, like, city commission, or, mosquito control, or whatever it happens to be in your area, because it's a good experience. And you do learn the ins and outs and how things really work. And because if they're, and especially on a local level like that, we knew we were having issues with these creeks, because they were eroding people's yards. And so, water's going to go where water's going to go. I became quite an expert on these things. Didn't want to, but you do. And, so you start to go, well, maybe we can do this. Maybe, maybe throw this at it over here, it'll fix it. Or, maybe if we do a more comprehensive study of what's going on with the entire creek, we can figure out how we can take care of the whole thing instead of piecemealing. So you learn.
You learn as you go, and it's a real process, and developing resilience.
It really is. And so now when, my friends or anybody wants to talk about politics, I'm like, sure, but I can tell you how it works. And it's never as simple as, it's never cut and dry. it's you really have to get in there and see how the whole process works to understand how you can fix problems.
Mm.
So that's probably the biggest takeaway.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So it sounds like, yeah, you've gone through a lot of processing in that and developed and kept a thick skin. And
Yes.
so I'm curious if that then maybe set you up for another long process, which is writing a book. Publication is a practice in perseverance. Writing the whole book, putting it together, that's a long process. How have you managed to keep going to finish 100 Cups of Compassion in such a way that you're excitedly working on your next book? So how have you managed to keep going and finish?
If you talk to my publisher, she would probably go, oh my goodness. Because it was really a process and I had never done it before. So, I would be like, well, I sent her an email. How come she hasn't come back to me? Or, it was a process. Or, I went with one printer and that printer, I thought, that's the one I'm going with. That's one. And at the very last minute, it was like, yeah, that's not the one I'm going to go with. So it was hard. It was really hard. It was really a learning curve, to understand what can be done, what can't be done. Because from that end, from the publisher's end, she was using a whole different format that I was not familiar with,
Okay.
like a not a word, so and same thing with the photos. And what was so important about my book was having good, the right kind of photos for them and of the artwork. So, things had to be manipulated so that they would work right. And that was like sometimes out of my scope of what I could do on the computer. So yeah, I had to maneuver all through, and she did too, I'm sure. And she had to reel me in and maneuver through that. And it was just really a learning experience. It really was, or I would put a Bible verse in there. And I just did this the other day too with the second one. And she's like, well, what is that? Is that like, the King James version, or is it? And I'm like, I don't know. I just picked it out. So, you got to know which versions. Of course, you have to give credit to everybody that you use, if you use a quote, where you got it from, and that kind of thing. So, but mostly like the formatting, because I wasn't working in what do they work in? Like it's called something to actually format the book.
I think there are a lot of different programs that publishers
Design
can
or
use.
something, yeah,
Sure.
something like that. Yeah. And so
Okay.
I didn't have that. So I couldn't sit down and go create something and pass it along to something online, something in the document, and pass it on to them and say, here, just throw this into your iDesign or whatever.
Sure.
That's not the way it works.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest learning curve. It was like, it seemed like it should be real simple, but it wasn't. And I have just enough of that kind of background to know that they're working in something, but not enough background to know how it translates from point A to point B.
Sure. Yeah. So that because you were working with somebody else, you're working on a team, you're having to actually trust that they're going to make it look good, and continuing having those conversations to get what's in your mind out visually then on the page.
And I think I felt more like maybe an art director than a writer. Even though I had to write the foreword and those kind of things, like the beginning of the book, and I had to there was some writing that I did that was my particular journey and my quotes and those kind of things, and I had to do those things, and those had to go to an editor. And but a lot of it, again, since it had to deal with artwork, I felt very visual about the whole thing. And I said that at the beginning. I said, this is going to be a very visual book, and it's really important what it looks like.
Mm. So can you say a bit more about that? How did you know that it needed to be a journal as opposed to a different format with more long form writing from you, or even from um, like an anthology or collection, especially if this started while you were doing your master's program? You're surrounded by amazing creative minds. What made you want it to be an interactive process with your reader?
That was, again, I think that was just like a Holy Spirit moment, because I can't say that I don't know where that came from. I don't know where that came from. That didn't come from a friend. It didn't come from a person. It just came down. It came from me sitting down and praying and like, what should I do with these pictures? And I felt moved to do something with them. I just didn't know what. You know, I didn't know what that process was going to be. And I thought, through some really difficult times in my life that had happened in the past 5 years, a lot of loved ones with addiction issues, I got kind of thrown into that world, and which is an amazing world, people that are in recovery. And it's just, you talk about seeing miraculous things, and there's so much hope for people out there that, you know, might have issues. I think a lot of it came from that too. So I felt like, you know, if you can get a journal, or if you can get these pictures or quotes, these positive quotes from the Bible into somebody's hands that may never have cracked the Bible open in their entire life, if you can just do that, they might look at it and read one quote and throw it in the garbage because it's a Bible passage and they want nothing to do with it. But you know what? They read that one quote. They read that one Bible passage, right? Maybe that's the only thing they need. Maybe that'll resonate in their head somewhere down the road. You know, you just don't know. So that's, I think, where it probably all, the whole journaling part of it, you know, setting it up that way probably happened, because I did myself, previously I had breast cancer, and I started journaling through that journey 5 years ago. And that was really difficult. But that's when my journaling process sort of started. So I knew how that could be. Then I got thrust into sort of this environment of people in recovery. And again, which I say is just a very wonderful, interesting group. And they do a lot of journaling. That's like a common theme. And writing things down and feelings, and, you know. So I thought, well, this might be a way to do that.
That's great. Yeah, I love that. And, you know, reading through this book, you have so many different quotes in here and so many different, just like thoughts that you have had, and so much encouragement and hope. And so I'm really curious, because there are a lot of quotes that you've chosen. And then I imagine that you read others. How did you choose these quotes or thoughts to be the ones to ponder over?
Well, every morning when I get up at around 4:30, between 4:30 and 5 o'clock in the morning. And I sit for about an hour and a half to 2 hours in my back room where it's quiet and nobody's up yet. And I have my coffee and I read, oh gosh, all kinds of different devotionals. And I get emails that come through. I read the Mass every morning. And just, I'm bombarded pretty much every morning for about 2 hours with just Bible passages and reading through the Bible and scripture. And so a lot of them came through that way, through my meditations in the morning and my journaling that way. A lot of them came through that way. But then, you know, what ends up happening is when you get yourself into that process of prayer and journaling, amazing things start to take shape. And especially if you go back and you start reading things that you read and you wrote from months prior to what you're doing, and you start to see patterns, and you start to see Bible passages. This always cracks me up. Bible passages. I always say, God, when I pray for something, I say, you're gonna have to hit me over the head with a 2x4, because I don't get these little, like, small massages here and there. You got to like really whack me over the head for me to understand what you want from me. But and then you start to see these passages that just start to repeat, and they might repeat over and over in the same day, but in 5 or 6 different places, that aren't even connected. And that would start to happen a lot. And I'd say, okay, that needs to be thrown in there somewhere. I got to find the right visual for that phrase and for that scripture piece. And that's really how it all took shape.
Oh, that's great. I love that. It's a process of brewing or steeping, actually, in a lot of hope-filled words, and then allowing that to come to the surface. So that's kind of interesting. I know that you're a tea and coffee lover, and that obviously comes out in this cups, 100 cups of compassion. And so let's talk about those cups. Actually, like, you could paint anything really to loosen up, right? As an artist, but why paint cups? And then also you mentioned about cracks as a symbol in your cups visually. Could you talk about the cup love, and then what some of the symbolism that you paint into it is?
Sure. The cup itself, that, again, when I was painting those, it was an easy form for me to paint. But the more I painted them, I started to ask that same question to myself, like, why am I painting these cups, other than I can, this form is like a doodle, so it's easy. But, I started to really kind of pay attention to what is a cup, and the coffee, and, and coffee is a huge, and tea. I mean, it's ceremonial, right? It's across the board. It doesn't matter what country you're in. There's either going to be coffee or tea or some ceremony that goes along with it. Even if it's just meeting at, a coffee shop in the morning with your friends, or if you're in Japan and they have, big ceremonial, that ceremonies that they do with tea, and across the board. So it's universal. And what it is it brings comfort to people, right? I mean, the liquid itself brings comfort and kind of calming, and it's warm, and it's inviting, and it's something that you do when you sit around with your friends and make connections. So there's community involved in that, and we're humans. We need each other, whether we like it or not. And trust me, I'm not always the most compassionate person in the world. So this was writing this was a bit cathartic, but we need each other. And, I mean, think about it when you haven't met with your girlfriends, or if guys haven't gotten together and had a beer or whatever, or even coffee, it's just something we all do. And again, I can also take that back to the recovery community, because it's such a big, there's always coffee no matter where you go. When I was growing up in the Methodist church, coffee, there was coffee in everything, coffee or tea and everything, in the morning, coffee and donuts. Or when, you would meet for Bible study on Wednesday nights, there was always coffee. People got together, and it's comforting.
Yeah, it's a place to belong. And I think too, it's really interesting how you've ended up painting these for yourself, but from this place of understanding, like, what like your love of coffee and what it does for you, and that comfort. But then even the symbol of it has turned to be a comfort for people literally around the world. All of these people who've received one of your cup paintings for themselves, or to bring to someone else. And so even that is creating community, and that seems to really be surrounding what your work is.
Yes. I mean, it's just that's what I hope it does. I hope it brings comfort. My one friend who was in Tunisia for many, well, she was all around the world for many years, but she said, as a missionary, she said, a lot of us collect things that have world maps on them. A lot of missionaries do, just whatever in their journeys, they collect things. And she said, could you paint one of your paintings and paint your cup and then paint the world map, on it? And I said, sure. So I did that. I did a special one for her, which she has. And she turned it into postcards. So she took the image, I sent it to her, she took the image like off the internet. She could turn those into postcards. And so she did postcards that also went out around the world to her friends and the people that she was meeting when she was doing her missionary work. So
yeah. Oh, that's great fun. I love that. So like the world is a symbol, there are hearts, there are a lot of floral themes, and then there's this, I want to go back to that crack, like talk about that. Why the crack? Why the jewels over it? Say more about that.
So the crack showed up. I had a real tough 5 years, and not even really, it was really a real tough 2 years in my life. I just moved into St. Augustine and ended up getting divorced. I was married for 23 years and was diagnosed with breast cancer. And my journey, thank you God, was a little bit not as devastating as some people, but a lot of radiation and that kind of thing. But was going through that, and then had a very difficult time with my ex-husband, and got divorced. And divorce is just, it's earth shattering. I mean, it crushes you. It's horrible. It's horrible. So that all kind of, and 2 hurricanes. We had 2 hurricanes almost back to back within 11 months here in St. Augustine. So it was just boom, 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 boom. Stuff happened, and that was just really stressful, very stressful. And so for, I would say maybe about a year, probably longer, maybe a year and a half, I didn't paint, I didn't do anything because I just couldn't, I didn't feel like I could even breathe, let alone try to pick up, a paintbrush or anything else. So when I started painting again, that's when the crack came in. Was after all that stuff I went through. And so the crack shows up, and now I'm painting these cups, and I'm thinking, because that's the way I felt very broken, and I don't, that never goes away. That brokenness doesn't ever go away. Somebody the other day said to me, you sound like you still grieve sometimes. I said, well, of course I still grieve sometimes. These are horrible things that people go through and very traumatic, and and it's not just me, it's everybody in the world has their problems and their issues that they go through, and it's hard. And a lot of times those things are so traumatic that they don't ever really leave you. They get better, right? And they're pretty. You can use them. They become part of who you are. And so that's when I started realizing and making those discoveries in myself and going, okay, well, I'm really flawed and I am really broken, but I'm just going to put this really beautiful Band-Aid over it. And that's where those little jewels came from. They're like little sticky jewels. And, so I put the diamonds across the crack because I'm like, well, that looks nicer than just to have this like nasty crack on it. So, and then literally I was doing these paintings with these cracks and trying to beautify the cracks. And then I read about the Japanese art form where they fill the cracks in their pottery with gold. And I apologize that I can't remember what that art form is called.
Kintsugi?
Yes, yeah, I think that is it. And I started reading about that, and I thought, okay, which was really weird because I was doing my cracks and then I read about that. It wasn't like that entered into it until years, I was just doing my thing out of brokenness and repair. And then like a year later, I was well, they've been doing it for a couple thousand years, so they're probably ahead of the game with me than I am. But they probably are the ones that really, got that to light. But so that's where the cracks came from. And they continue. I still have them. I don't do all my little cup paintings now with them, but Every once in a while they'll enter in there.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting how your art has actually transformed because of how you, as a person, as a creative person, an artist, painter, has you've transformed, and what you've gone through, your art has become richer because of that experience, as painful as it is.
Yeah.
Um, c- so you said that you, in that time when things were particularly difficult, that you didn't actually create. And so you
Mhm.
kind of you took a complete pause from that.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
did. I took a step back from a lot of it, and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. And that's
Yeah.
okay. I don't,
Mhm.
I don't feel like you have to be creating every single day. One of the great things I learned when I was in school was like cross creativity, you know. Um, so if you're a visual artist, which I am, um, and you find yourself in these places where you're having a hard time creating, or in your case, writing, um, cross create, go do something, a different art form, for a month or for a week or 2 weeks.
Mhm.
So in my case, I started journaling. That was another thing, that kind of helped me with my visual art. Photography, you know, if you're a writer, go take some photography classes, or get online and do some photography prompts or drawing, you know. If you're a musician, go do some dance, or sit down and do a painting.
Mhm.
That cross creativity, because creativity begets creativity.
Mhm.
So if you're stuck on one thing and it happens to be your expertise, get out of that and go find a different avenue to create. Then come back to what you're an expert at, and what you practice on a daily basis, and see how your creativity will grow from
Mhm.
there.
That's really cool. I love that idea of cross creativity and intermixing disciplines, as it uses a different part of our brains, I think, and can activate a real richness when we are able to activate that different part that is creative but more dormant. So it's interesting hearing you talk about this being compelled to create, even if it's in a non-primary discipline. And I think that you have a philosophy about everyone having the ability to create. Is that correct?
Yes,
Could you
definitely.
say more about that, please?
Yeah, everybody can. We're born with it. It's a gift. We all have it. And it comes out in different ways. But even if you're a mathematician, you can still create. That's still coming from a place of creativity, coming up with formulas, and being able to see formulas in your head and get them down on a piece of paper. I always laugh because I was a Big Bang Theory person. Did you ever watch a Big Bang Theory?
A little bit.
And I tell my students this. I was teaching some continuing education classes in drawing and creativity classes at Flagler College, just for community, for the community. And one of the things I tell them is, okay, do you remember when Sheldon had a hard time because he couldn't come up with it? He couldn't solve one of his math problems. And so he was out, he did a million other things besides that. Like he was in a ball pit and he was trying to do creative stuff. And that's a thing. And that's a real process that a lot of people do, that get stuck in whatever art form they're working in, or even if it's not an art form, even if it's just their day-to-day job. You got to get out of it to solve that problem. You have to be thinking of something different. So I would tell my students that all the time. You've got to go down a different avenue just for a little while, then go back and look. And usually your artwork or whatever you're writing, it just gets magnified. It like blows up. So,
Yeah,
and
I love
everybody's
that.
creative. Everybody's creative. You have to nurture it, and you have to create. We've gotten stuck in this definition of creativity as being, you're an artist, you're a visual artist, or you're a writer. And that's not what creativity is. I mean, creativity is problem solving and thinking outside of the box, right? Solving a problem in a different way than what you think you might have to solve it in one way. You know, this is the only way we can solve that problem. No, probably not. There's probably a million different ways that you can solve it. And that's where the creative process comes in. So everybody's creative, you know. I haven't met too many people that don't even, you know, at least have a hobby. So even if they're a nuclear scientist, they usually have a hobby. There's usually, if you talk to them long enough, you're going to find out, oh yeah, I love photography. I go out on the weekends and I take my camera with me and I drive around. Okay, well, I guess you're not an artist then. You know, I mean, everybody is creative and everybody has some kind of, you know, just varying degree of how it comes out. You know?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think one of the things that can trip people up is the having to feeling like they have to produce a product.
Right.
But especially for visual artists like you, writers like me, and many of the people who are listening into this, one of the tricky parts is knowing when something's finished. Could you speak a little bit to that fine line between like, this is gold and I wrecked it?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot. I could sit here for hours. I can. That's so funny. Yes, because as a visual artist, you sit there, and I know you do this in writing too, and you just struggle and struggle. And I'll tell my students this all the time. I'm like, I can see it when they're doing it. I'm just walk away, just walk away. I'll go, what? You don't stop looking at it. Just go take a break, go do something, and then come back and sit down, and it'll be like, boom, I see it. There it is. There's the problem. That yes. And as far as like when it's done, I say you have to live with it.
Yeah.
So in visual art, I'll tell my students, I'll say, okay, now take it home. Because they're like, well, I'm not real sure if it's done or not. And I do this myself. You know, I'll look at something and go, I don't know if it's done or I think it's done, but I'm not sure. So I say, I got to live with it. So I'll hang it somewhere in the house or prop it up against a wall or whatever. I'm looking over here because I have a painting sitting over there right now that's not done that I have been working on. And I just keep it there and I live with it. And I don't give it all my attention. It's just, you know, as I go to work in the morning, I take a glance at it and I go out the door, and then I come back again at night and I might take a glance at it, and I get a chance to see it in all different kinds of light and shadow. And then, you know, if I over time get this feeling like, you know what, I don't really think I want to touch that. I really think I like it. I think it really speaks to me. I can sit and talk about it. It's done. You know, it's done. That's how I know. And that's what I tell my students, is just live with it for a while. Stick it on a wall, walk by it. You know, if you find that every time you walk by it, you like it and you don't want to add anything or take anything away, then sign it and it's done. So move on, go to the next thing.
That's great advice and wonderful segue as well into this next question. What's next for Robin Hamman?
Oh, it's exciting. I'm working on the second book. So I've got, like I said at the beginning of you know, our discussion, that I've got Art Rob Studios was always just, that's me. So that's my, you know, teaching art and retreats and my artwork that I've done for people, you know, paintings that I've done for people. And then I've got the Twisted Leash, which is my pet portraits, which is just fun. That's been around for, I don't know, 15 years now, I think. That's all online on Facebook. And then I've got 100 Cups of Compassion. Well, the next book, I wanted to do 3 books, one to represent each one of the little businesses. But I mean, we all love our pets, right? I mean, that's going to be huge. So I've started that book. That's going a little bit faster because, you know, I know what to expect now. But I knew I wanted, just for, you know, consistency, I wanted all the books to be the same format, devotionals, journals. But this one's been really fun because I'm Catholic, but there's a lot of saints out there that talk about animals. So, you know, they have prayers for animals and how animals fit into the Bible. And so it's been really fun, like Googling just, animals. I think we talked about sheep being mentioned like 182 times or something like that, or 100 times in different passages in the Bible. So that's been really, really fun, like seeing how animals and living creatures were incorporated, like how they're incorporated, how they lived with humans all these years. And God made them for a specific reason and made us for a specific reason. And then just to hear the saints talk about all these different animals, pretty interesting.
Oh, that sounds very fun. Yeah, that's a fun project coming up next. We'll definitely be excited to see when that comes out.
That's going to be a good one. That's going to be a good one. Then after that, I'm going to try to work on the Art Rob Studios one, which probably that might actually have a little bit more writing in it, because I think that's going to be a little bit more about my journey and my process and some of the artwork that goes along with it. So that might be a little different. I feel real strongly that the journaling is just a good avenue. These are small books. They're 117 pages. So if somebody does pick it up, like I said, it doesn't matter that they're scripture. Most of them are scripture oriented. It's biblical. But the Bible verses, as you and I both know, are so beautiful. That I think that even if you're a person that maybe doesn't believe in Jesus or doesn't believe in God, you're still going to pick this up and you're going to see the artwork, you're going to see the journaling lines, and each quote or each piece of scripture is just God breathed. So I think it has the ability to change people, I think, but it's not scary. It's not like picking up an entire Bible if you've never opened a Bible before, or it's not. And that part about journaling your feelings and writing, and you can draw in it, write in it, rip it up if you want to, or use it for some of your. I've had just a person the other day that was posted on Instagram, journaling daily. Oh, I forget what her hashtag was, but she was doing that. She was journaling beautiful. I mean, she did the script writing and calligraphy, and so it's really fun to see what people how they're taking the book and turning it into art forms themselves.
Yeah. Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah,
like
that's been really fun. And like I said, and now here, I don't know any of these people personally, but yet I know they had to read some of that scripture. So it's kind of like this sneaky way of getting people to read the Bible.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of beauty in the words that you have chosen to put there, and matching it with your understanding of brokenness and how you have healed over time, and in your work in the medical field with arts, and your work in the recovery community with arts and journaling and so on. And yeah, there's a lot of hope that art and words can bring to people. So I love that. Just as we are closing out here, what would you say are your top 3 tips for folks young and old who want to get their art, their words, their creativity just out in the world? Top 3 tips. What would you say to them?
Oh gosh. Well, first of all, just do it. Don't, we just talked about this. Don't let the fact that you have to create this great thing get in the way, that there's got to be some kind of byproduct or some kind of great thing. I've taught that that's the way I approach my teaching, I tell people, you're going to sit in front of a white canvas. I mean, and that just can make you go blank in 2 seconds right there. You got to not care. Just throw it on. I say nothing is permanent. Nothing is forever. There's nothing that's permanent. You can write over it. If you write something, you can erase it. You can write over it. If you paint something, you can paint it. If you don't like it, you paint over it. Matter of fact, the best paintings are those paintings. I tell my students, don't ever throw your canvases away. Never, 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 never. I don't care how ugly you think that thing is that you created. Keep that canvas, because you will paint on top of that. and you will let some of that come through at the bottom, and you will have, that will end up being the painting that is the best painting you've ever done in your entire life. So, those mistakes need to stay there.
Mhm.
In whatever you're doing, writing, drawing, just music, I'm sure musicians come across the same thing, the happy accidents and you got to keep those things.
Yeah,
Right?
that's awesome. So just do it. Allow yourself the freedom to let mistakes, what seem like mistakes, come out.
Right.
And any final advice?
Gosh. Yeah, I just, stick with it. Because I think that's the hardest thing that everybody comes across. Sometimes it's not the starting, it's the just keep with it. I was finding that yesterday when I was painting something and I just kept looking at it going, sometimes you sit down and you think to yourself, wow, do I really know how to paint? Did I forget how to do this? And I was kind of feeling that way a little bit yesterday morning. And then I thought, Robin, you've been doing this for a million years. Just, you got to keep painting through it. Paint through it. You'll come out the other end. You always, what you do, your process, you always hit this ugliness. I always call it, it's going through its ugly phase, right? You got to come out the other side of the ugly phase. So same thing with life, right? You hit these challenges, you got to come out the other side. Same thing with painting. You start off and you're all excited and then everything's flowing. It's really great. And then boom, you hit like this. You have one section of your painting, and I'm sure it's like this in writing too. You have one section of your manuscript and it's all great, but you got all this other stuff around it that's just horrible. And you go, what was I thinking about that? So you have to kind of just keep pushing through it, push through it, painting over it, keep writing, keep pushing through it.
Yeah.
Even if you go, pages and pages and pages of creating just ugliness, eventually that's going to turn and you're going to come out the other side. And at the very end of it, you're going to, wow, that's exactly what I was going for. That's what I was trying to create.
Oh, wonderful. I love that. I love that perseverance and allowing the beauty in the process to come out.
Right.
Well, Robin, thank you so much for joining us today. How can readers and artists, so how can folks get a hold of 100 Cups of Compassion? And also, how can they keep in touch for when your next project is released? Where can they purchase your book? Where can they commission pet portraits from where can they learn from you? Tell us all the ways to get connected with Robin Hamman.
Well, the book has all of my my different Facebook pages and my social media and everything is all in the book. You can get the book at Amazon. So it is on Amazon. It's on Walmart. All online, walmart.com online, Target online. So those are the three big ones, and you can order it right through there. Or you can get a hold of me through Facebook. You can message me through the Twisted Leash. I have Facebook pages for all of them, and I'm really connected on Instagram also. So message me. Yeah. That's
awesome.
one of the easiest ways if somebody wants a commission.
That's great. Well, Robin, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much for sharing all of your insight.
Thank you.